the latest dose of Bipolar Recorder. This podcast may cause dizziness and blurred vision. Enjoy.
Welcome back to Bipolar Recorder. My name is Hunter Keegan. I've been running this independent operation since October of 2021. This show offers long-form interviews and dialogues with people who live with mental illness, as well as mental health professionals and allies of the seriously mentally ill SMI community. We seek to educate the wider public about the human nature of serious mental illnesses, namely bipolar disorder, but we often touch on other conditions too, such as schizoaffective disorder, major depressive disorder, borderline personality disorder, etc. This is the 50th official installment to the podcast series, which is a pretty significant milestone. I'm proud of it. I've now had dozens of one-on-one conversations with people from all sorts of different backgrounds discussing their lives with serious mental health conditions. My perspective on and understanding of bipolar disorder has evolved quite a bit since this show debuted in October 2021. For one thing, I've stopped referring to it as a quote-unquote disease. For a long time, I used the word disease to refer to bipolar disorder because I felt that alluded to the equivalency of mental illness with physical illness and best conveyed the severity of bipolar disorder to people who may not have encountered mental health issues themselves. But these days, I prefer the term mental health condition, because living with something like bipolar disorder doesn't mean you're inherently flawed, broken, or damaged. I think of this condition from my own personal perspective as a multifaceted and intriguing neurodivergence with both positive and negative outcomes. The negative outcomes are pretty obvious, I guess. I mean, you've got psychosis, hospitalization, damaged relationships, and so forth. But what about the positive outcomes? Well, some of those positive outcomes are direct, such as the intense thinking and rapid information processing, or intense spiritual connectedness that some people feel during periods of hypomania or mania before it spirals out. Other positive outcomes are indirect, such as the fact that living with bipolar disorder, in my own case, has made me have to actively work on myself, both individually and for the last several years with a therapist. I think that brings about a level of self-awareness and self-actualization that most other people might not experience in the same way that I do. I recently read a 2017 study from University of California that examined how bipolar disorder is often correlated with high levels of creativity, or even exceptional creative potential, as they refer to it in the article. Just think of Vincent van Gogh or Ernest Hemingway, or one of the myriad other legendary creatives who lived with bipolar. Openness and, believe it or not, impulsivity are the key personality traits strongly associated with creativity and divergent thinking. In fact, I often have to remind myself during the course of my outreach that my life experience and worldview inherently come from a different angle than that of the general or median population. So the interesting challenge for me becomes finding ways to synthesize what I'm thinking and feeling and then to effectively and concisely communicate it. So far, that's been primarily taking the form of my books and this podcast. In other news, a random correction I wanted to make, and I'm pretty sure I did not mention this previously on the show. But from the first 50 installments, there was a correction that I've been meaning to make, if I haven't already. I honestly can't remember. But anyway, in an early conversation I had with bipolar musician Stu Alexander, I mistakenly referred to Dick Cheney, the American politician, as a former director of the CIA. That's wrong. I'm not sure where I got that from. Dick Cheney was closely involved with the deep state throughout his tenure in the federal government, but he was never directly employed by the CIA in any capacity that I'm aware of. That's been bothering me for a long time, and I've been meaning to go on the record to correct my statement from, 2 years ago. Whatever. I've learned a lot from all of these podcast interviews, as well as the hundreds of conversations that I've had while hosting peer support groups on Twitter Spaces. Some of what I've learned has to do with technical aspects of various serious mental illnesses, such as better understanding diagnostic criteria and symptoms. But the most important learning experiences that I've gathered have more to do with keeping an open mind at all times, not making assumptions, and maintaining a curious stance on all things that come across my metaphorical and literal desk. You may have noticed that today's installment of the podcast features new intro music. I felt like by installment 50, the original intro music I've been incorporating into the show was starting to get a little bit stale, so I wanted to overhaul it and create something a bit more unique and chill. I don't like using pre-made loops or other generic soundtracks for my podcasts, so I crafted this intro in my home studio using a variety of analog synthesizers and an acoustic guitar. I think it came out sounding sort of like something off of an early 2000s era Radiohead album. I hope you enjoy this new post-rock indie vibe. I might continue experimenting with other music as well, and I know all of this is very superfluous, and most people aren't listening to Bipolar Recorder for the music, but as a musician of some sort, I felt it was necessary. Anyway, for today's interview, I had yet another old friend of mine from my days as a student at Penn State come on the show. His name is James Kalupson, and he's currently an associate marriage and family therapist, AMFT, in California. That means that at this time, he's working with clients under clinical supervision. He is not technically fully licensed yet. However, he still works with clients in California while he pursues that full licensure. He explains more about this during the interview, but the main focus of this conversation is actually not his work in California, but rather what he does at a psychedelic therapy retreat based in Jamaica. Full disclosure, James and I used to do a lot of psychedelics together in our early 20s. We ran in the same social circles at Penn State and often ended up partying together late at night in his backyard on the outskirts of State College, Pennsylvania. He and I were both guitarists, so sometimes we'd jam out together too, which was always chill. Total rock and roll outlaw vibes. Good times. This was a really fascinating conversation for me because it had been about 10 years since James and I had last spoken with each other. Now that we're both in our early 30s, it's so interesting to see where he's gone in his career over the years. In this conversation, James provides a detailed overview of the type of work that he does at the retreat in Jamaica and the benefits of psychedelics for treating certain mental health conditions, primarily PTSD, depression, and anxiety. I know that we talk a lot about psychedelics, particularly psilocybin, on this show. So I wanted to get someone with formal experience in psychedelic therapy on to talk more about it. Please remember that on this podcast, we are never advocating that you pursue a particular course of treatment. We're just sharing about different forms of self-care and professional treatment that are utilized by various individuals living with various types of serious mental illness. I feel that James also does a really good job of providing a balanced overview of psychedelic therapy during this conversation, including discussing scenarios in which psychedelic therapy may not be appropriate for certain people. James's perspective and views shared on this show are his alone. While we mentioned the specific retreat he works at a couple of times, which is called Myco Meditations, this show is not sponsored by them. All right, I think this provides enough background and context for you to get an idea of what this interview is all about and where it's heading. Here's my conversation with James Kalupson. James Kalupson is an associate marriage and family therapist, AMFT, who provides mental health services to clients in the state of California. He's currently pursuing his full licensure while under the supervision of an approved clinical supervisor. In addition to that, he works as a psychedelic facilitator at a retreat center based in Jamaica, where he utilizes traditional plant-based medicines, i.e. psilocybin, to help people suffering from conditions like depression, anxiety, and PTSD. James holds a master's degree in counseling psychology from Pacifica Graduate Institute and a bachelor's degree in engineering from Penn State University. And speaking of Penn State, that's where James and I originally met as students back in the early 2010s. We got to know each other fairly well, but we dropped out of touch for a while. And when I recently saw James make an Instagram post regarding what he's doing for his current career path, I was fascinated and I knew I wanted to get him on the show. So I reached out to him on Facebook, and look at this. We're here right now. I'm joined today by James Kalupson. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. And yeah, like we were talking before we started, it's awesome to see you. It's awesome to connect again. I mean, you mentioned it's been at least 10 years
Yeah.
since we've had a conversation, and I'm thrilled that this is how we're reconnecting.
Yeah, it's really, really cool to see where all of the different people who I knew back in those days have gotten to be today. And when I knew you, you were an engineering student. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you made that pivot from engineering into psychology?
Yeah, that's yeah, it's a good question. And I was in the engineering science and mechanics program when I was at Penn State, and I ended up working in the field in State College for a couple years afterwards. And it was just one of those things that, when I decided to be an engineer as I was getting into undergrad, I just really didn't know what I wanted to do. And that seemed like the best thing to do at the time for me. But as I got into the field, I mean, in retrospect, it was like blatantly obvious after like my sophomore year and how much I struggled in the coursework, just staying focused and like being generally interested in like, third order nonlinear differential equations and all that nonsense. Um, like eh, Looking back and realizing at how much my eyes glazed over in all those classes could have been an indication that maybe I would be more suited for a different major, but I didn't really understand that or have the self-awareness at the time. So I pushed through, got the degree, worked in the field for a couple years. But as all of these sorts of things tend to happen, eventually I reached a breaking point. I was working for a really cool company that I believe is still operating in State College. They were doing stuff with lithium-ion battery technology. And it was this startup. I was working really hard and I could just feel myself sliding into, pretty comprehensive like depression in terms
Yeah.
of motivation. I just was not really happy in any way.
Mhm.
Um, And plus I was still in state college, and 99% of all the people that I knew and were friends with graduated and left. So
Yeah.
it was me, and I mean, you were still here, and there were a couple other people that I knew.
Yeah,
But
and we're just for context, we're talking like about 2013 to 2014,
yep,
roughly, like back in there. I graduated December 2014. You had graduated a couple of years before that, but like we're still in the area for a little
yep,
bit.
yep,
Okay, right
yeah,
on. So you
yeah,
said you were basically you had been pursuing this, just weren't feeling passionate about it, is kind of what I'm
yeah,
hearing, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that was also the time where I discovered psychedelics.
Yeah.
And that, I kind of, lovingly refer to that time in my life as my period of rigorous self experimentation. And that it was during that period that I had experiences that I got the insight that, oh, I don't have to be doing this if I don't want to. I can live whatever kind of life I want to now.
Hmm.
And so through that, I ended up pretty much packing up all my things. I quit my job and drove across the country to California to get into sales because I still didn't know what to do at the time.
Hmm.
I just knew that engineering was not it, but I really had no clue what I wanted to do. And I figured sales was like the opposite of engineering. And I also liked dealing with people in the limited capacity that I did at my startup job. So
Okay,
I'm like, I'll give that a shot. It's the West Coast. I majored in renewable engineering. I'll sell solar panels door to door. So
for
that's what I
sure.
did.
All right.
And I did that for a couple years, eventually got into like a different corporate sales job. And after about 5 years of that whole thing from start to finish, I realized that I was feeling exactly the way I felt when I was in engineering, when I was at my other job. And it was, in a way, it was worse because, I had taken this huge leap of faith to try to kind of create and live the life that I wanted to. And I had put in 5 years of backbreaking labor, learning a completely different skill set that I
Yeah.
had before, really leaning into a lot of uncomfortable, like just personal edges of putting myself out there and communicating with people in a
Hmm.
specific way.
Very high
And
pressure sort of way
high
too.
pressure,
Yeah.
yeah, very much. I mean, I understand this now, but very much against my kind of natural inclinations from a personality standpoint.
Hmm.
But I did that anyway, and I eventually became quite successful. Um, on the surface, materially, I was making a lot of money, I had a girlfriend, I was living in LA, West Hollywood, partying, like the whole thing. But I still felt that emptiness inside. And so that was when I had like kind of another mini crisis moment of like, what the fuck am I doing
Hmm.
with myself? And so yeah, I kind of quit. I quit my job cold turkey, really not knowing what I was going to do. And that was the beginning of this kind of second phase of figuring out what I wanted to do. And after a lot of soul searching and just different circumstances, I decided to pursue graduate school in the field of psychology that would allow me to practice with people clinically, not like an academic psychology
Yeah.
degree, um, but something that I could do to work with people. And now here we are.
Here we are. So you became pretty disillusioned with engineering, at least in the way that it was taking you into your life journey. You said, "Hey, this is not for me." Tried sales. We're killing it, but we're like, "Hey, this is not for me." Were you using psychedelics at all during the time that you were living in West Hollywood and working in sales and all of that? Was that still part of your life in those days?
You definitely, it was definitely um, not to the extent that it was in state college when I was
Mm-hmm.
here. Um, and it was definitely my relationship with them definitely changed in the sense that I did it far less frequently, and it was usually much more, um, how would I say? I guess that would be the main thing. I just did them much less frequently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
After you found this new interest in psychology and working with people, what type of work are you doing right now as a therapist?
hmm So right now, as a therapist, I'm in a bit of an interesting situation because I'm building my own practice while working under a supervisor, and so I have a few clients right now, and this is a part-time opportunity that I'm splitting with my time in Jamaica. Um,
Okay.
and so, yeah, so the day to day when I'm seeing clients, I make my schedule to fit the clients that I'm working with. And so when I see clients, we meet for our hour-long session. It's via telehealth. Um, and yeah, we do the session. I record the notes, and then once a week I have supervision with my supervisor where I discuss what came up in the cases, and obviously the ones that are more serious take priority, and so don't get to all of them, but the highest priority ones we discuss with the supervisor. We just, I get her opinion. She asked me a lot of questions. I mean, there's all sorts of things happening in these interpersonal dynamics in supervision, in the
Hmm.
therapeutic environment. Um, and so it's a very rich dynamic where I'm working with people, learning about myself through the interactions with this person, obviously working with them in a way that's ideally as therapeutic to them as possible, and then going to my supervisor and having a different dynamic of a relationship where she's asking me about what's coming up in these sessions, not just in terms of content, but also, what kinds of feelings are being evoked in me by this
Mm.
client, and
Hmm.
how might those illuminate different pathways or potential options of working with this client.
Hmm.
Um, and so those are the sorts of things that are coming up. And then, aside from that, when I'm not doing that, because I'm not currently in Jamaica, I'm waiting for my work permit to get processed. But
Hmm.
aside from that, I mean, I'm doing a lot of reading and writing. Um, the kind of therapy that I'm really gravitated towards, it was what we studied in the school that I went to, Pacifica. Um, they emphasize a school of psychology called depth psychology, which is really a lot of Carl Jung's work. If you're familiar with Joseph Campbell, the mythology, all that stuff is really emphasized at this school. So I've been reading a lot of that material. It's something that I really resonate with. And so that finds its way into my work with clients
Cool.
quite
Depth
often.
psychology, you said it's called, right?
Yeah. Depth, not death. It's
Yeah.
a, I've had to make that clarification several times, and it doesn't
Oh
get
my
any
gosh.
less funny every time.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh, man. Well,
but yeah, depth with a
depth
P.
psychology, grieving and bereavement, that is a big part of it.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately,
Absolutely.
yeah, that gets pretty real. But I
Yeah.
appreciate that breakdown, and t I appreciate you telling us a little bit more about what the actual licensure and supervision process is like, and the types
Yeah.
of feedback that you get, and the dynamics that you have, and what you're
hmm
learning. It's all very interesting stuff. Regarding what you're doing in Jamaica, where do we really start with that? I mean, you're working with a group called Myco Meditations.
hmm
How long ago did you become involved with Myco Meditations?
So I started there in, I guess it was at the end of June of this year. And they have a program for facilitators for new facilitators. And so I've done 6 retreats with them over a course of about 4 months of being on island. And so each retreat is a week long. It's seven
Okay.
days, and there's a group of between 8 to 12 guests on average.
Okay.
And we're pretty much with the guests all the time. But anyway, I'm getting a little bit ahead of your question. I started there in June.
So you've been working with them for about 6 months now.
Mhm.
You said you've facilitated how many of these retreats so far?
So I've worked on 6 retreats, and
Okay.
that means I'm part of a facilitation team that
Okay.
has a lead therapist and a retreat leader that sort of set the tone and are responsible for managing the whole retreat
Okay.
with the team of typically between 5 and 7 facilitators, maybe.
Wow.
So yeah, we try to keep a low ratio of guests to facilitators so people can get a lot of really good
Like
one-on-one attention.
one-on-one kind of guidance.
Yeah.
When let's say the head therapist or facilitator is setting the tone for that environment, what is that actually like? What tone are they setting? And
Mhm.
could you maybe give us a little bit more context about what the environment is actually like? Like, are we out on a beach? Is this inside
Mhm.
somewhere?
Mhm.
Can you just kind of set the scene?
Yeah, I'll set the scene.
All right.
And so, right, so on any given retreat, it's located in a place called Treasure Beach, and it's on the south coast of Jamaica. And so the company, we rent out different villas that are alongside the beach, and this is where all the guests stay. Facilitators, we live off site. But during the retreat, the guests stay in these villas. It's kind of an all-inclusive
Yeah.
retreat type deal. So all their meals are cooked and made for them. Um, they're right on the beach. It's got like really good vacation vibes for them, beautiful views,
Okay.
housekeeping, the whole 9 yards. It's really about making them as comfortable as possible for the entirety of the week. And
Okay.
so they get a shuttle down to the retreat center, and then that typically happens on Friday night. So all the guests have arrived by Friday night. We typically have dinner with them. Everyone starts to kind of get to know each other. The retreat leader will, you know, I mean, it's really just like any other leadership position. They're taking responsibility for the total outcomes of all the guest experiences. So, they're making sure that they're introducing themselves to everybody. Everybody's feeling comfortable. Everybody's welcome. um just really a lot of just kind of general hospitality.
Yeah, like good vibes, yeah.
That's really, I mean, if you want to, that's really what we're aiming for. um because as we both know, with the psychedelic experience, it's really about containing and holding and supporting the expression and propagation of good vibes in every sense,
And
right?
I will say on a more serious note, a huge part of that I'm hearing from what you're explaining is also developing a sense of trust and safety.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I would say, like, another huge component of the whole experience on a retreat is because it's a group setting. There's, like I said, typically between 8 to 12 guests there at a time. And so there's all sorts of group dynamics that emerge that are incredibly potent and incredibly powerful in the total outcome of the experience. Once people start to get comfortable with each other and with the facilitation team, um, a lot of people end up really being crucial supports for each other in the groups. And so the facilitators can take on a somewhat different role as the
Mm.
retreat tends to
Mm-hmm.
progress. Because initially the majority of people are coming in with just a lot of apprehension and
Yeah.
nervousness and anxiety about the experience itself. A lot of them, this is their first time doing any
Wow.
sort of psychedelics.
Yeah.
Maybe they did it back in the 60s or 70s when they were teenagers.
Sure.
But this is the first time that they're really coming down, especially, you know, it's a big trip. I mean, this is a big deal
Yeah.
for people to do. And so people have all
Like
sorts of
traveling
expectations,
internationally, like getting on
international traveling.
planes, coming all the
Right.
way over. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
Exactly. So a lot of what we're doing early on as facilitators is really emphasizing and facilitating, um like, people being comfortable and getting into the experience and just kind of reassuring them that we're here no matter what happens, it's all going to be okay. um and for the vast majority of times, after the first dose, that's when everybody's like, oh my gosh, this was incredible, like this
Yeah.
was not anything like what I expected. um and that starts to build a sense of confidence going into the next dose and then the following dose. And so
Okay.
I guess I can also mention like the general structure of the retreat. So it's 3 dosing
Well,
days.
so before we get into the dosing, let me ask you
Hmm.
this. Is this specifically with psilocybin? Like
Yeah.
psilocybin only?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
And in terms of dosing, uh, so is this on the first full day that they're at the retreat?
Right. So they arrive on Friday and then the first dose day is on Saturday.
Okay, word.
And then it's alternating. We alternate integration days and dosing days. So first
Okay.
dose day Saturday, and then they have all day Sunday where we do a group integration. There's
Okay.
usually like some sort of activity, whether we're doing yoga or going out to breakfast or something.
Cool.
Um, and then people just kind of have the rest of the day to journal, relax, like do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, just kind of
Um,
like chill, like keep it
yeah,
sober, kind of
yep,
reflect on what you've just experienced and all that. So
exactly.
you're balancing it out. So like I was almost wondering earlier, I was like, oh man, are they just like tripping out for like a straight week? That's crazy. But
Yeah,
this sounds a lot more responsible than what I had in mind. That's probably why
right.
I'm not in charge of like designing these these courses. Um,
Yeah, well,
that
that's what we're trying to do. That's the main point. Like the first day, the first dose day, it's referred to as a get to know you dose in terms of getting to know the mushroom experience. Then on the subsequent dosing days, it will typically increase to account for um the tolerance factor, the slight tolerance
yeah.
factor that's
Yeah.
built up. Um, and also, depending on what people experienced on the first day, it's significant for them to go, it's important for them to go higher and to take more to have a deeper
Yeah.
experience.
Like keep
Um,
exploring.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
so it's very subtle and it's very attuned to each individual person. You know, on the second and third dose, they maybe go up a little bit and then maybe come back down on the third dose.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of like just a consolidation dose we refer to it as. But really, I mean, and that's one of the most important things, one of the most important roles as a facilitator is to be attuned into what each guest is experiencing, not just during the doses, but in the off times. How are they responding to their experience? How are they reflecting on it? You know, how are our side conversations going with them when we're sharing meals together and going for walks on the beach? You know, what's coming up for them?
Yeah.
How are they personally feeling about their next dose? Are they
Hmm.
feeling, really scared to go higher? Are they feeling really excited to try more? Are they feeling really confident to stay the same and go down? So as the week goes on, we're doing a lot of just consulting and
Hmm.
reflecting with them. Um, the way that I look at it and the way that I think that we approach it is it's almost kind of like learning to ride a bike in the sense of the guest's ability to understand and navigate their relationship with the mushroom experience, because we don't want it to be a situation where they're coming down and we're just telling them here's how many mushrooms you're going to take. The deeper intention, at least in my view, is, I love to see it when guests, especially like when it's on the third dose and they're going into it and they're like, I feel really good about taking less than I
Yeah.
did on the second dose. Like I have a
Yeah.
really clear intention and expectation of what I want this to be for me, and this is what I
Yeah.
want to do. And like that kind of deep confidence in their own relationship with this bizarre, non-ordinary state of consciousness that they're going to
Right.
experience, like that, to me, that's the most precious thing, because I think that's where a lot of the real insight and personal growth comes from, is that sort of
Yeah.
insight.
Yeah,
So
100%. Let me ask you this. Does anyone ever tap out? Like, has anyone ever done like the initial dose and been like, whoa, okay, like that was enough for me?
yeah, it has happened. I would say it happens more often that people come out of a dose saying that. and they
Mm-hmm.
end up by the time it's the next dosing day comes around, they've kind of come around. They're like, okay, like I'm ready to go back
Yeah.
in and I'm ready to do it.
For sure.
But absolutely, for sure, there are some people who, they get exactly what they need, and they feel like they've got the experience. But I would say those are, I mean, it's never happened to me on any of the retreats that I've worked at. I've never seen it happen. But
Mm-hmm.
obviously, working with other more experienced facilitators, I've heard of situations where it has happened before.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for most of the clientele on Myco Meditation's website, they say it's specifically for people with conditions like anxiety, PTSD,
Mhm.
depression. Are there any other types of conditions that people tend to seek services there for, or is it really mostly like depression, PTSD, anxiety?
Yeah, I mean, I would say those are the most common things that the guests that I've worked with come down
Okay.
to work on. Um, but we also have had I've been on retreats where there have been repeat guests. So this
Mm-hmm.
is their second, sometimes even third. There's
Yeah.
even one person who it was their fourth time coming down on retreat. By the time those second repeat um, experiences are happening, it's not necessarily as much about like anxiety or depression. They've already been through the first retreat and they're really looking to kind of re-engage their relationship with this experience and
Yeah.
maybe continue to work on these sorts of things of depression and anxiety. But I would say, I mean, obviously without speaking for the guests themselves, I would say that what I notice is that they see it differently. Their relationship with whatever their experience is
Yeah.
very different after having gone through at least one retreat. Um, I don't know if I can like qualify that or describe that specifically in any more detail, but I think you get the point of
Yeah.
there's a lot of the intention to continue exploring, not necessarily solve this problem.
I get that exploration factor. And I think that it also becomes very much a spiritual thing too, because after you've seen just the limits to your sober perception of the universe around you, it introduces questions, a whole lot of different questions. For me, it included questions like, what's the nature of God? Like, what else could be out there? What is science missing? Those
Mhm,
sorts of
mhm.
higher level things.
Right, right. Right, and that happens with a lot of people who experience psychedelics and also people who experience who come to retreat in Jamaica. It's very common, and that's another part of what our job is as facilitators is to provide containment and validation and support for those experiences that can be incredibly bewildering, and people can really not understand
Yeah.
and really have a hard time. I mean, it's called integration for a reason. It's because all of this material, all these insights, all of these shifts in perspective emerge and they need to be integrated into the kind of ordinary the state of consciousness that results from just ordinary reality. Um, it's hard to do that. It's not a straightforward process, and yeah, that's what we do. That's what we're there for.
For this next part of the conversation, I asked James if any of the clients at these retreats have ever experienced bad trips or psychotic episodes as the result of the psilocybin. That's something that's known to be an issue for some people who live with conditions such as bipolar or schizophrenia and who partake in psychedelic drugs. Without going into too much of the nuance behind what constitutes, a bad trip versus a intense trip versus a traumatizing trip versus a psychotic trip versus whatever, this is what James shared.
I will say that there's a huge component of what mycomedications is the screening process that people have to go through.
Okay.
It's not like you just decide to, you want to do mushrooms down in Jamaica for a week. I'm gonna like pay the retreat. I'm gonna sign up and I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
It's quite a lengthy application process that usually takes several weeks, if not months, to go
Oh,
through
wow.
every stage. There's a very rigorous application, kind of background history. Every person is required to meet with one of our therapists on staff
Okay.
beforehand,
Okay.
and they do an entire hour-long conversation. I believe it's an hour. Maybe it's 30 minutes or so,
Like
but
a proper therapy appointment.
right. It's
Yeah.
because we want to understand as best as possible the people that are coming down, what their intentions are, what they're working with,
Yeah.
what their prior experiences with other psychedelic retreats might be,
Mm-hmm.
what their experiences with other psychiatric medication, like anything
Yeah.
that's going to be important for them based on what they filled out in the application. We want to make sure that we're able to support people in the best way as possible. And the reality with psychedelics is that there are a lot of contraindicated uh, symptoms and experiences that people have where it's probably not the best idea for you to come down and do a retreat with us, not because you have a symptom or you're diagnosed with something that makes you inherently flawed and unfixable, but it's just that it's outside of the scope of what we're doing. And
Yeah.
we don't want to say that we can help you and be in a position where we're not able to
Yeah.
and you get hurt. And so that's something that Myco takes very seriously. And there's a lot of people on the team that work really hard as part of the applications process.
Yeah, I gotta say, I am so relieved that you just said all of that, and it
Yeah.
gave me so much better of a feeling about like how legit this is. Like
Yeah.
for real,
Yeah.
dude. Like straight up, because I was thinking to myself, I was like, what if like someone like me went down there, someone who has bipolar disorder with psychotic features? I probably
Hmm.
wouldn't be the best candidate for that type
Hmm.
of scenario. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yep.
And I think that the concern that I have when I hear about not necessarily myco meditations, but some of these different groups that are doing work like this throughout South America, the Caribbean, whatever. Um, I get concerned that they're not doing that type of vetting and they're not doing it in that responsible type of way. And it's
Right.
so important that that
Right.
does happen because,
Right.
like you were just saying, it could not be the right fit. And you could be trying to find something that is just like not even there in the first place,
Right.
you know?
Right. Right.
Um, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it's an important, like I said, it's an
yeah,
important feature of what we do. And I mean, it's one of the main reasons that I decided to go there and work there because
yeah,
I didn't want to work at a place, at another one of these places that you're describing, which
right.
most certainly exist. And
Yes.
unfortunately, I would say from what I've seen, this is the only place that I've actually worked, and I haven't been to other retreat centers personally, but um, I've seen, and I mean, there's many publicly available stories and reports of people who go down to different retreat centers, and it's the discernment and the qualification and the application process of the people that they're taking on is either non-existent or
Mm,
much more limited. And I mean, I mean, and I think this is something that people who are, have apprehensions about this kind of broader psychedelic renaissance,
yeah.
from a bigger picture. I mean, this is a legitimate concern and
Hmm.
objection that they raise
Hmm.
of really making sure that, um, these sorts of things aren't happening, where people are kind of getting into situations where you know, they have experiences that can make them worse in some cases,
Yeah.
especially, you have latent, schizophrenia or
Mm,
psychotic tendencies that you don't know about, or, people, you might think that doing mushrooms will help fix it, but it just makes
yeah.
it worse. And there's all sorts of things that can happen, and it's a tremendous uh, delicate care needs to be taken
Yeah.
in all of these situations.
Yeah, for sure. I will say that over the last, and I've talked about this on the show before, but about the last year and a half, I started dabbling in psilocybin again after
Mm,
not touching psychedelics for I don't know, like since I was in college, you know.
hmm
I hadn't done anything like that since 2014.
mm,
And when I started experimenting with that stuff again, about a year and a half ago, it was after I had just broken up with a long-term girlfriend. I started kind of dabbling in shrooms a little bit more over that summer, and things went really well for the most part. But that was when I was using them in moderation, very far apart, and like it seemed to be working for me on a personal, individual level.
hmm
But I would say about 6 months ago, when I dabbled in shrooms, what started happening is I began having what my psychologist has told me are called manic spectrum events while
mm,
tripping.
mm,
So like I did not realize that tripping shrooms by myself can sometimes make me start to like think there's police in my fucking living room. You know what I mean?
sure.
When I'm
Yep.
laying in bed in my
Yep.
studio, my music studio that's back there in the other room.
Yeah.
When I think there's police coming into my house, when I am flying into like weird rages out of
hmm
nowhere while tripping out, I didn't even know that was possible. I didn't know you could get angry on psilocybin. Apparently
hmm
you can.
hmm
And for these reasons, I've had to like really take a big step back from it.
mm,
Basically, since July, I dabbled a little bit over the weekend of Thanksgiving, and
mm,
that actually went really well and was a lot of fun. But
hmm
anytime I do it these days, I just have to remind myself that I'm playing with fire.
Yeah.
And like you do have to be very
Yeah.
cautious about it. I use them really, I would say these days for like spiritual and recreational purposes, not because I'm
hmm
trying to fix any aspect of bipolar disorder or anything like
hmm
that.
hmm
But that's just what my own experience has been lately.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, thanks for sharing that. I'm sure it's helpful to for your listeners to hear that. And we are playing with fire here in a sense that
Yeah.
is, I mean, there's something that really resonates about that metaphor, because we are warmed by fire when we're cold and freezing, and it can be very helpful, but we can also burn the house down,
Yeah.
um, which happens. And so I hear you. It's something to be not to be taken lightly. That's for sure.
Yeah. You got to be careful with it. When you think back to our time at Penn State and, the kind of shenanigans we were getting into back in those days and everything. I would you
Mhm.
say that we were using psychedelics safely in 2012? All of
I
us
would,
across you were always a pro, but what about the rest of us?
well, I mean, I don't know that I was the pro. Uh, I mean, I would say, I mean, I think for the most part we were. I mean, w- nobody was really assessing ourselves for, latent psychosis or any sort of mental disorder that would increase a lot of the risk factors of taking psychedelics. So,
Hmm.
there was risk involved in that sense. But I mean, I think in my recollection, most of our group experiences together were really just about having fun. And it
Yeah.
wasn't like we were, for the
We were
most
like,
part,
hey guys, let's do acid and do group therapy together.
break out the guitar. I mean, we had that awesome fire pit at the back of our house.
Yeah.
And so like I think in a lot of
You-
ways of all the ways to do psychedelics, I think we adhered to most of the the principles of safe
yeah.
psychedelic experimentation. We stuck together.
Yeah, we were looking out
Um,
for each other and shit.
Nobody was really like going off the deep end in terms of
Yeah.
like fuck that. I want to take 5 hits. Like
Yeah.
we were all, let's just, we'll take a hit of
Just like
acid and like
chilling.
build a
Yeah,
fire, hang out, put the hammocks up and just, chill around the fire.
for sure.
Listen to music. Yeah, I would say we were doing we were doing it pretty well, I think, all things considered. I mean, especially compared to like when I think of some of the experiences that I've had in the rave community
Dude,
and
that's what I was gonna
going
say.
to
Yeah.
parties and concerts. I mean, that's I've seen things on a completely different level.
Dude, did I ever
Um,
tell you the story about the slightly stupid show I went to? I had to have told you that at some point.
maybe
Maybe.
I don't remember. I don't
Okay.
remember it.
Well, maybe I wouldn't have. Okay, so this is what. Let me tell you the story. So what happened, and this is what came to mind because I think like when we were partying in state college, and it was like at your place or someone else's place or whatever, and like you said, everyone's kind of just like chilling, hanging out, listening to music, keeping an
Mhm.
eye on each other, whatever. When it comes to like festivals and even just going to a show, like I think that gets really dangerous in a lot of ways
Oh yeah.
really quickly.
Oh yeah.
So there was a slightly stupid show in Pittsburgh. I think the year was 2013, which may be why you wouldn't have known about it. But so my a couple of friends of mine, you knew both of them, Liz and J Dog, and we went to Pittsburgh. We went to this slightly stupid show. Right before we went into the show, someone gave me like 2 tabs of not LSD, but like research chemical shit, like 2CE or something
To
like that.
see, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I took like these 2 weird tabs, and on top of drinking like almost a fifth of liquor, and we went into the show within fucking 10 minutes, dude. I was like, I am about to die. I was like looking up at like the stage lights, and it looked like it was a fucking mechanical octopus like coming down on me. And I saw like and this actually carried over into when I had actual bipolar psychosis, like months and or almost a year later. But I
Hmm.
saw like shadow people coming out of the crowd at me and stuff too.
Hmm.
And it was really disturbing.
Hmm.
And I freaked out. I got separated
Hmm.
from my friends.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was like the worst. So I got separated from people. I ended up spending the entire night standing out in the parking lot, just like chain smoking cigarettes and like losing my shit.
Hmm.
Totally awful night. Was really bad. Probably traumatized me somehow. Like I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, dude, like it's like there's a time and place for everything, I think.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
if you're gonna be doing psychedelics, you have to keep your wits about you. You got to do it in a way that's at least semi-responsible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and when you say time and there's a time and space for everything, I think, there's a lot of conversation and there's a huge emphasis on like this set and setting of the
Yeah.
psychedelic experience. And um, that's, that really is what it's all about of what is the environment that you're in, both externally and what is your headspace like? Um, Diving into the nuances of each of those realms and trying to optimize them as much as possible is really one of the most important things, if not the most important thing about doing a psychedelic trip.
Mhm.
Um, and I mean, yeah, to your point, I mean, concerts, festivals, I mean, these are places of chaos
Yeah.
intentionally. I mean, it's, that's kind of the point. Um,
Yeah.
people want to go party with strangers and listen to insanely loud music that's
Yeah.
overwhelms your senses. Um, and psychedelics in those spaces can be, I mean, I've had experiences of myself that are, I mean, some of the most profound experiences I've ever had, but I've also
Mhm.
had experiences that are, on the other end of the spectrum,
Yeah.
leave me with really scary questions and experiences and um,
Yeah.
just not positive experiences.
Yeah, sometimes those psychedelics bring up really weird things too that are just a lot to fucking try to wrap your mind around.
Right.
I I can say, God bless my current therapist because over the last year and a half, I've had a lot of conversations with her. I've worked with her for 5 years now.
Oh, that's
And
great.
dude, she's so rad. I love her. But over the last year and a half, I've been talking to her a lot about some of these weird mental health spaces I've been getting into. And if I
Hmm.
didn't have like a proper therapist who knew me
Yeah.
well, who actually like
Yeah.
knows me to
Yep.
talk to about that shit,
Yep.
like I would probably just be in a really weird spot right now.
Totally. Totally. And that's what we do as facilitators.
Hmm.
And again, to your point, that's in my view, that's kind of like what therapy is all about. You
Hmm.
don't necessarily even need psychedelics to benefit from having someone stable and consistent and grounded to bounce all of the crazy shit that all humans experience on a daily basis,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things that I've come to understand about the psychedelic experience, or I don't know if it's an understanding in as much as my personal interpretation of these psychedelics. They're magnifying, they're just magnifying what we already experience on a daily basis. All of the emotions, the
Yeah.
imagery, the dreams, the everything that already exists in our psyche. It's
Hmm.
just that, the way that our mode of consciousness is set up, it kind of filters through that so we can kind of navigate the world in an effective way. But in a sense, psychedelics soften whatever that boundary is and amplifies and allows all those things to kind of emerge from the depths, so to speak. And we don't know where the bottom of that ocean is. We can't see the bottom of it. We don't know how deep it goes. And, you know,
And when those
the
waves start coming, you can't turn them off. Like,
exactly, exactly. You better hope you have your life jacket.
yeah, dude. Oh my God. Women and
Right.
children first. Uh, Jesus. Yeah, well, do you think that if you're going to be involved in this type of psychedelic facilitation work, and this is
Mhm.
something that you're going to help people embark on these sorts of journeys for, would you say that a psychedelic facilitator should have psychedelic experience themselves?
My immediate inclination is absolutely, no question.
Okay.
Um, and so when I say that, I immediately start thinking of, okay, well, are there any counterexamples of somebody who doesn't have that? Um, and so, and I'm sure there are people who have had psychedelic experiences that they've had a friend sit with them
Yeah.
that has never done psychedelic experience. I mean, I guess maybe it's really more a question of what do you want to get out of the experience?
Yeah.
Because if you have a friend that has no interest in taking
But here's the
psychedelics,
thing though, right? Because like
yeah,
having a friend who's just chilling with you, trip sitting you, is a lot different than someone saying, "I'm a psychedelic facilitator." You know,
right.
you know?
Absolutely. And so yeah, I think it gets back to that question of what does the individual want to get out of the experience? Do they want to eat mushrooms and just have a little bit of reassurance that if anything unexpected happens, they have someone that they can trust that can handle it, and I'm thinking of, a casual, someone just takes a dose on the weekend and they have their friend there who can answer the door if someone knocks on it.
Yeah.
They don't have to deal with it. Like, basic things of just
Yeah.
like, and then they don't really need somebody to like process everything with. They just
Yeah.
want to do it and feel safe. In that case, someone who doesn't have experience was probably perfectly fine to do
Yeah.
that. But if somebody is doing it and they're, there's a degree of intention behind it. I want to go into this and I want to learn about myself. I want to explore what comes up and the meaning of all of this.
Yeah.
I have a specific thing that I'm working on. Maybe I haven't had a good psychedelic experience in the past, but I want to do something. I guess I would say bringing in a psychedelic therapist or a facilitator or an experienced trained guide in any way is really going to be there to help you attend to and be with all of the nuances of your experience, including the most insightful and the most impactful and the most sometimes traumatic and overwhelming parts of the experience.
Yeah.
you're going to have someone there who ideally has experienced that for themselves and
Hmm.
thus can really empathize and acknowledge and validate what your experience is, and have the capacity to be with you and support you as you integrate and understand it for yourself. So that's like a long-winded like answer generally, that I would say absolutely yes, if it's if there's any sort of intention to use them
Yeah.
in a way that isn't just purely like whimsical and recreational.
Mm,
um I would say absolutely.
totally.
Yeah.
Do you still use psychedelics these days?
Yeah, and it's very much I would definitely say as I've gotten older, my relationship with them has changed. And
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, it's it's very much almost a um I mean, sacramental might be a little bit too heavy and like laden with a bunch of
I took a
connotations, but
sacramental dose of lysergic dithylamide.
yeah, yeah. So, I kind of hesitate to like go that far in that direction. But I mean, I guess I would just say like with the intentionality and the, um, having worked with people and had all the experiences that I've had myself, just like we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation, understanding and honing my own relationship with the experience,
Totally.
um, to be able to get out of it what I want to get out of it.
Hmm.
So
What would you say the key takeaway from a psychedelic experience? Obviously, it's going to be different for everyone. So maybe let's say for the individuals who go to these retreats, what do you think some of their key takeaways are after being through the whole hallucinogenic tripedalic experience?
I would say for most people that I've worked with and seen, um, generally speaking, people are coming in with kind of a habitual state of consciousness that is just very unsatisfactory to them, whether it's
Hmm.
trauma, PTSD, depression, anxiety, whatever it is. It's like a thick veil that 20 years of medication or therapy or whatever they've tried in the past hasn't worked to help them. And I would say, generally speaking, kind of the universal experience that the vast majority of people have, the biggest takeaway when they come down is, even if it's just temporarily, they experience a brief window in time where they're kind of transcended or removed from that. And a lot of times it's something it's almost deceptively simple, of just experiencing the profound beauty of a tree
Hmm.
or a blade of grass, or looking at the ocean, watching the sunset, hearing the birds chirp, whatever it is, tasting the pineapple when they're coming down in the afterglow. Little things like that. It really, it's such a, to me it seems like there's a almost universal experience of being nourished and revivified by experiencing viscerally, subjectively, that there's more to their experience than what they came in with. And so a lot of times, even if that window closes when the mushrooms wear off, the insights that people have, and even just having that experience, I mean, it's also very common for people to be really reinvigorated in continuing to do their own work um, after they leave the retreat. Many people are very interested and enthusiastic about continuing to work with us facilitators in a one-on-one basis to continue processing the experience.
Okay.
Many people are asking us for referrals, like, do you know any therapists that I can work with on a weekly basis to continue spending time
Okay.
with this? And that's another really incredible thing that I think
Word.
people get out of this. And that's
Yeah.
like, when people say that, like, that's when I'm like, yeah, because it's not like it's not like everything changed for them. And I mean, sometimes that happens, but a lot of times it's like this temporary stripping away of whatever they were coming in with, and
Hmm.
they experience themselves in a more holistic way, and they're able to experience the simple beauty of the present moment and watching the sunset over the ocean. And that is enough to inspire them to be like, okay, there's something in me that I can intentionally work with to keep, to process and shift through and transmute through whatever I'm experiencing. And so it's work, it's hard. But to see people with a new enthusiasm and interest in doing that is, that's I love seeing that. That really fires me up.
That's amazing. That's so
Yeah.
beautiful. And people are such wild spirits, you know. The depth that our lives go into, the depths that our psyches go into is just incredible. And there's so much
Yeah.
to explore there. So
Yeah.
that's just so awesome that you've been able to have this become part of your life in a way where you can help others find inner peace, find fulfillment through not, let's not just call it drug use, through this spiritual therapeutic experience, you
Right.
know, because I
Right.
feel like without the facilitators, without the therapeutic environment, the setting, I mean, dude, I've just been thinking how chill that must be sitting on a
Yeah.
beach, taking some psychedelics in a safe,
Yeah.
comfortable environment.
Yeah.
Like that's amazing. So
Yeah.
yeah, just I'm so happy for you, man.
Thanks. It's a real, I mean, all of us facilitators say this at one point, usually when it's an intro, when we're doing the introductory, like around the group on the first day. It's a real privilege to be able to do this and work with people and experience exactly what you just described with all of the guests. Um, the depths of the human psyche are impossibly deep, and
Hmm.
to be able to work with people and help facilitate their venture into that, um, and then to also witness them bond with the other retreat members and the other guests, and there's this kind of this crystallization of the group dynamic where everybody's in this, like, everybody's in the trenches on this weird retreat, going through all their shit, and like, everybody's putting everything on the table, what brought them here, what they've been struggling with. It's really incredible to see the courage
Yeah.
that people come down and the vulnerability that
Yeah.
people are willing to show up with. um it's so special, and I don't use the word blessed often, but I don't hesitate to say that I feel blessed to be able to do this and help in whatever way that I can.
For
Yeah.
real. I love that. Do you have anything you would like to plug for the audience, anyone who's been listening to this and would like to find out more about the specifics of what you're doing? Like, how can people find you to learn more about your work? Are
Yeah,
people cool to like reach out to you if you have a
absolutely.
social media presence or anything like that?
Absolutely. I'm still working on getting out all of that set up, but I do have a website. It's jameskalupson.com. I have a bit of a newsletter up and running. I'm getting that kind of solidified, and I'm learning all these things about how to build a website, how to build an email list. So
Oh, it's the best.
it's yeah, I'm like, oh, cool. Like, I have an email list now. Um
Yeah, Administrivia is the best part of doing any cool project.
yeah. And so, yeah, my website, jameskalupson.com. And I'm going to link all my social media onto my website. Don't really, I try to spend as little time on there as possible.
That's
It's,
smart.
I would say that's my vice. Internet addiction is no joke either.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess, people go to my website, they'll see my work. I am emphasizing working with men
Hmm.
and men's issues, and so that's something that I'm really passionate about. And my
Okay.
newsletter is called Masculinity in Depth, and it's going to be focused on a lot of the stuff that we talked about in this conversation, and then also men's work in general,
Yeah.
all those sorts of things. That's the general theme of it. Yeah.
Just really quickly, because I'm on board 1000%, but do you want to highlight a little bit about why it's so important to emphasize working with men in some cases in the context of what you're seeking, the types of services you're seeking to provide?
Yeah. I mean, that's a big question.
I know
It's
we
kind
could
of a
probably
can of
do
worms. We
another
could,
full hour just about that,
we,
but just
we could
because
do a whole other podcast for sure.
yeah, maybe
I
in the
mean,
future we could do that if you wanted. But
yeah,
so I'm just imagining lots of men do not feel comfortable becoming involved with therapy, uh,
absolutely.
do not feel comfortable discussing highly sensitive topics in a lot of cases. There is
Absolutely.
something called the patriarchy, there is
Yeah.
masculinity,
Yeah.
these are things that impact people. So please, like in
Absolutely.
your own words, is there anything you'd like to articulate there?
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe the best way to put it is that one of the driving factors for me to get to be doing what I'm doing now is at a certain point when I was figuring out what I wanted to do and kind of at the beginning that I was discussing my path to get here, um, asking myself these questions, it occurred to me and it kind of crystallized what I wanted to do was become the person that I needed when I was 25, when I had moved to California, when I had seen a therapist for the first time, didn't have a good experience. And yeah, without getting into all the details, we can maybe do another podcast at some point. But I wanted to be the person that I needed, um, because it was really hard for me to find somebody that I could trust and who was relatable and that
Yeah,
I really felt safe with, who also understood what I was going through and could really help me. And so um, I ventured into the metaphorical desert in out in California, um, and it took me a long time. And eventually, that was kind of a huge inspiration for me was to become the person that I had been looking for when I was younger. So it's really important for me to work with men, because I know personally how difficult it is to find the right person.
yeah,
Um, and everything that you mentioned, we're living in a unique cultural moment where the tension between men and women has never been higher, at least in
yeah,
my lifetime. Conversations and questions around the definitions and meanings of
yeah,
what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, sexuality, gender, reality. Like it's all really, in some ways, it seems like it's being torn apart at the seams.
yeah,
And um, even statistically, looking at mental health statistics, we are at the bottom of so many categories, whether it's
mm.
advancement in education or, highest risk for suicide
Yeah. I was gonna say
completions,
we're at the top of the
um,
category for
you
completed
know,
suicides. Yeah,
addiction,
yeah,
homelessness. I mean, men are the leaders of all of these extraordinarily tragic categories. And it's a complicated mess. And so that's those are a few of the reasons,
interesting. Yeah, I can tell. I'm like, yes, we should keep going, but it's getting a little late.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, but
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for that nutshell breakdown. And if you would like to come on again in the future to elaborate further, I'm sure we could set that up. I'd love to have you
Sure.
back on. This has been a ton of fun reconnecting with you and
Yeah.
certainly talking about this super interesting subject matter. So this has been James Kalupson.
Perfect.
All right, cool.
Perfect. Thanks so much, man. It's been great.
Thanks for listening to this 50th installment of Bipolar Recorder. I've included links in the show notes for James Kalupson's Psychology Today profile, as well as his own professional website. As you probably gathered throughout this interview, psychedelics are a multifaceted and complex area when it comes to spiritual, recreational, and medical use. Psychedelic drugs can be beneficial in some cases and harmful in others. By examining them through a real-world lens, we can observe these varying outcomes and inform ourselves about whether we think the risks are worth it. I've spoken pretty extensively on this show and in Twitter spaces about my use of psilocybin over the last year and a half, and whenever I make statements on Bipolar Recorder regarding my psychedelic drug use, I feel like I'm putting myself on blast, because I am. I know that I'm not exactly the most responsible person when it comes to using virtually any type of narcotic, so I have to be very careful about when and how I use psychedelics. And as I've stated several times throughout the show, and again also on Twitter Spaces, is that as of July 2023, I have started becoming much more careful in my psychonautical pursuits, and I use that sort of stuff extremely sparingly these days. I've said it before and I'll say it again, I am not a role model. My goal for this project has never been to cast myself as a role model. I'm a guy living with serious mental illness and I'm not always stable. I make questionable judgment calls and even mistakes at certain points as I navigate my life with bipolar. I hope this raw representation of myself adds some verisimilitude to this mental health advocacy effort. I have big things planned for Bipolar Recorder in 2024, and if you'd like to support this project to help make those big things possible, you can buy some cool merch on bipolarrecorder.com or support the show on the patreon.com platform. If you dig these interviews, tell your friends about the show, and always remember to rate, review, and subscribe to Bipolar Recorder on your favorite podcast streaming app. James Kalupson is on Twitter/X at James F. Kalupson. My name is Hunter Keegan. I'm on Twitter/X at HH Keegan. Bipolar Recorder is on Twitter/X at Bipolar Recorder. Keep spreading the word about this project, and feel free to reach out to me with comments, questions, or feedback. Happy New Year. We made it through 2023. Let's try to make it through 2024. Have a trippy but safe day, evening, or night, wherever you are. Bipolar Recorder is a listener-supported show. To help keep the show running, consider checking out our Patreon page or visiting bipolarrecorder.com.
Unless otherwise stated, the hosts and guests on Bipolar Recorder are not licensed mental health professionals. Bipolar Recorder is not a substitute for therapy or professional medical intervention. If you are having a mental health crisis, please contact your local emergency services.